Hi, I'm Rose,
And I'm also Rose.
and this is Rose Playing Games, where we're roses and we play games, specifically tabletop role-playing games. So, Rose, this week you were gonna talk about economies.
Right. I mean, I think we this kind of came up in the last one, and I don't know. It's when I was trying to do some research about how I was going to address this topic. There are a lot of different angles,
Oh yeah.
and I felt like if anything, I should just try to do a survey and cover all of them. But it does mean so. Like when we say economies, we have to set some boundaries
Okay.
here.
Yeah. So I've
because-
heard action economy. Are we talking about action economies?
No, we're not talking about action economies. Although, I mean, you could say it matters. That is a type of economy. There's like the metacurrency economies, etc. I feel like that's kind of, if anything, we could do another episode.
Yeah. Right. Talking more about like mechanical economies, but we're
Right.
talking about like in the world, people have gold, they have silver,
Gold,
they
right.
trade chickens. You know, they do economy stuff, or maybe they got credits and they're in the cyberpunk future.
Right. Well, you can tell if it's fantasy, it's gold. If it's science fiction, it's credits.
Yeah.
Um,
Which, like, we're there. Like, we don't use cash anymore.
Pretty much. I mean,
we are in the credits
it's
future.
fairly accurate. A lot of the stuff that we do now is basically they were already doing in Shadowrun, 20 years ago. So, like, okay. There's a number of places to start with this, so I'll just let's start from the layer of how economies tend to function in practice. One of the most basic economies, which is the party and how the party's inner economy works.
Oh, okay. So, like, who gets what items?
Right. Like I think it's kind of funny that there's like a way that everyone just ends up doing it. I find, at least in my experience, where everyone defaults to this very even.
Yeah,
like,
everyone gets the same amount.
Everyone you get a share, and you get a share, and you get a share. I have had it sometimes go slightly differently, but it always kind of ended up working out that way in practice.
Oh, are there ones where someone's like, I get more?
Oh, well, like I once had a game of His Majesty the Worm, and one person was technically the henchman of one of the other players.
Oh.
So on the charter, the henchman doesn't get a share, and the person who has the henchman actually got just 50% because there were 4 people in the party. But the henchman's pay happened to be half of what it was. So it was funny. It really just worked out to the same thing.
Yeah, it was more of a narrative thing.
Yeah, it was a good narrative bit though.
Can you imagine play a class in an RPG that's just like you don't get any money? Right? That would be a fun move, right? Like
I mean that is a thing. Vow of Poverty. It's I have seen vows of poverty show up in certain games where you had like some sort of like monk or Templar or something.
Makes sense, right?
So
Some that
is
aesthetic who hangs out in the mountains, lives in a hut.
That is actually a thing sometimes, and then they'll tend to get like abilities that obviate needing magic items, or they get some sort of just like your faith and spiritual potency. Like you just get that +1. You don't need the sword, etc. But so it's interesting because there's this built-in concept of fairness, but it's not just everything splitting, because as soon as you get down to something specific, it kind of ends up working on this kind of communist model, like two each according to
their
his
need.
Yeah, we're like, oh, this is a wand. Like technically, you could try to split that, but anyone's just like, well, when do we give it to the sorcerer? The fighter's not going to take it. That would be dumb.
Yeah.
Like, and it's
right.
Not,
this is specialization.
yeah.
Right.
Like, sure, you could go sell it and then split up the gold, but you wouldn't.
Yeah, because that would be very inefficient.
Right. It would. It's not even just a matter of It's not even just a matter of like, oh well, like now that sorcerer is getting more. That's flowing back to the fighter, because the sorcerer is now fireballing better, and then the fighter is maybe living in a situation where they might not have.
Oh
otherwise.
yeah, right. You are inherently in it together, right? In a way that is not necessarily always true in a real world economy.
Right. But at the same time, it is kind of, so I think that, and this is something I think we talked about before, where I brought up the concept of demand sharing.
Oh, okay.
Right. So this is something that comes from anthropology.
Yeah.
There are a number of rather interesting patterns found when found specifically like in relatively small, primarily like hunting and gathering.
Oh, so like most of
societies.
human history.
Exactly. So actually, I feel like to some extent, what like those kinds of tiny party sizes are a little bit closer to
Oh, okay.
early human
yeah,
history.
you're like a hunting party.
Or not even most of, as you say, early. It's like that's the majority of everything.
Yeah, we're at the very late.
We're very late. We're
like
very
the party has been going on,
1% tail
and we
end.
are showing up at like 2 a.m.
Exactly.
Right.
So and I mean, still people even to this day. Right. So there are a number of different things, but one of them is there's a version called demand sharing, where you can always demand that someone share.
Oh, okay. In the
It's
name,
actually
does what it says in the tin.
Pretty self-explanatory. Like it's just the idea that everything is inherent. You expect is owned by everyone. In
So
your
like
group.
everything is shared
And, like,
unless
if
there's a good reason not to.
Yeah, if someone like takes down an antelope or something and brings it back, everyone can say, "Hey, I want a piece of that." And you can't say no, or at least it would be extremely bad form to say no. The only exceptions being certain things of like it's where it's recognized like, okay, that is of great sentimental value or ritual significance or something. Anything else, you have to share it.
Yeah.
You have to say, hey, I need that knife. I'm whittling something. And they can't just say, no, you can't
it's my
have,
knife.
That's my knife. That's not a thing.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, it's not that exactly what's going on when in your average like D&D party, because it's still being
Yeah, if
played
you're like,
by
hey, give me
people.
the armor, the person would be like, no, this is my armor.
This is mine. There's still a sense like you're dividing it, but once it's divided, it tends to be treated as
Yeah, once you have
yours.
your gold, right?
Right, because it's still being played. It's still a game being played by people who live in our society with a bunch of economic ideas.
Oh, and the society that the world is often in is often, to some extent, has capitalist elements. You go and you buy stuff at shops,
Yeah.
right? There's a town with a market, right? You know, like commerce is happening and money matters.
Right. Which kind of leads into the next thing is that it's kind of interesting that even when people are trying to play games that are medieval, they tend to impose a rather kind of modern capitalist way of thinking about commerce, where like in medieval society, a lot of stuff you couldn't buy.
Yeah,
really.
Right? You often couldn't buy land.
Yeah, like a lot of things were just you could only largely get through inheritance or special dispensation. Like you're not buying that land, and yeah, once again, there's a lot of variation. There's anytime we're talking about anything here, there's going to be so many qualifiers
but we're
and
assuming
exceptions.
medieval England is our template,
sure,
because that's where so many
right.
RPGs
but
are
you're not
basically
buying,
set.
You're not buying that land, and like even with physical objects, like you don't really buy a set of full plate.
Yeah, because it would be crazy expensive, right?
Well, it's not even just that it's expensive.
It's also like it's just
that
like
it's most what actually matters is like if you could go up and have a ton of money and you smack down that ton of money, and where are you getting it from? What really matters is having the supply chain and having the assembly line, so to speak, of this person that knows how to do this piece and this piece.
It's more
and
comparable
this
to the fact that you generally can't buy a tank,
right? It's
right,
like
or
that.
or a fighter jet, right? Governments buy these things,
right?
Right, individuals do not buy these things. Right?
So, and this is related to there's a concept that I've seen. It divided economies into a few different stages. The lowest one was called the turnip economy. With the idea, it's the form of economy that, if anything, player characters don't even typically interact with all that much. It's like the peasant economy.
Yeah.
It's what, if anything, 90% of the people in the setting are doing. They have some turnips, and the guy next door has some chickens.
Right.
And you end up trading them. I mean, not always bartering. There's often an element of like communal ownership, or there's a lot of credit. People don't tend to like people in that kind of situation don't really do a whole lot with money. Money is something that
this is actually
no,
historical tangent. Every single government for a long time was like, we want to collect taxes from people, but no one has any money, right? Because money is just like a thing that the government makes, and the government is very weak in not most places, and so most taxes were collected in the form of food, right? From farmers, right? And so it's like, oh, your taxes would be like bundles of wheat or whatever, right? You know, so that's definitely very much like the agrarian economy, the turnip economy, right? Where like no one actually has money, right? Money is rare, unusual, special, right? And often not even that useful.
Right, it's not even useful to you if you mostly are interacting with people in your village. What do you need a bunch of little special?
Yeah, the money is for when you go to town.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the thing. Money is something that is for itinerant people. Like a merchant wants money because they can get that money and then take it somewhere else. And so a soldier wants money.
Yeah, because otherwise you'd have to carry all the food, and that's impractical.
Yeah, or the way they're getting paid, and it's like, well, I'm over here in this other land now. So if anything, the expansion of money historically is a little bit tied to imperialism.
Yeah, right. And the expansion of the central government, right, which is basically imperialist most of the time.
Yeah,
right.
But it can also just have, it's something that's already in place. You see this in ancient China, adopting relatively advanced for like paper money and that sort of thing, well before anyone else,
because they had a very long established, powerful central government, right? But you're saying that the adventurers, right, they're itinerant, right? They're wandering murder hobos, right? Exactly. They only want money.
So you usually skip to the next phase, the next stage, just the gold economy. Sometimes it's a silver economy or something.
Whatever, who cares?
Honestly, it's largely irrelevant. You could argue that if anything, the concept of always using gold is not super accurate. Silver would honestly be
make more sense.
Would be more realistic.
But what would make the most sense is debased currency, actually.
Yeah.
Right? Is a lot of a currency that is only like a tiny percentage the actual metal it says it is.
You could do that. I think that would be kind of fun, actually.
Right.
You see that gets played around a little bit, I've seen, but it's often gets a little bit too specific.
That's the problem. It's a little too granular for most games, right? We're getting into the simulationist economy.
Right. And that is something that that's part of it. That's the stage 3 of this system, where it's kind of it's the stage at which you actually stop caring about gold pieces. And this is, I think, the part where games don't tend to go to, and I feel like they should. Which is that once you start getting up to actually having land and maybe getting involved into politics, being a major player, you don't really do a lot of accounting of how many you can't.
Money is for middle class merchants and other dirty people.
And that's the thing. I think a lot of the concept of when people go to write games and have their economies, they have a bourgeois mindset.
Yeah,
they have a very middle class mindset,
right? And also a mindset that makes more sense in our current world, where everything's for sale.
Right.
Where having billions of dollars is a thing that you can do and exists.
Right. But even then, like, the actual people that, like, the actual billionaires of the world don't even really deal in money in the same way
because they often live off of debt in a weird way.
Right.
Where they're just like constantly borrowing against their assets. But like,
their assets are heavily not even money. Exactly. They're a bunch of like they're frozen up in a bunch of things that they hold, and people just kind of they essentially just give them things because they expect, oh, well, you're good for it.
Yeah.
They're not even really using money in the same way that we imagine, and they personally aren't caring about the money. They have people that handle that for them. You see this a lot in the past with nobility, whereas it tend to be considered like rather gauche to like think about or handle money. It's like, no, that's
that's for groups of people that we don't like.
Yeah, that is for lesser people. That is,
right?
Maybe you have an accountant who does that, but
that's often, the role of your social outcasts, your ethnic minorities.
Sometimes
right?
too, yeah.
Right, not always, right? But there's a reason that Jews are associated with banking. It's because it's like, oh, we don't want to be associated with money.
Well, that was because of usury.
That too, right?
Where everyone wanted to get money lent at an interest, but they didn't want to have to actually do it because it was sinful. So what if we let someone we don't like do it?
Yeah, and then occasionally get really mad at them.
Yeah, and then like when we don't want to pay our debts, we'll just drive them out and then not have to pay the debts anymore.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't really want my games to include anti-Semitism as a core mechanic.
Not my favorite, and not something most people, but it's a historical pattern. That's the thing, though, is that what I would say was like now people are really okay with usury.
Oh, yeah.
Like, people don't even think of that as sinful anymore. That's just normal. Everyone does that.
No. Everyone has a credit card.
Yeah.
Right? And everyone, lives off of debt
and has student loans and et cetera, et cetera. Everyone's in debt all the time, and there's always compounding interest and whatever. That's considered normal now.
Yeah. But okay, so what do you think is interesting to do with an economy in a game?
So going back a little bit. So if anything, I feel like there's something to be said for once you get to tier 3 of like your domain type play. You probably, if anything, shouldn't even... what I think you want is to introduce a third type of currency, something that's bigger than gold. And there's a number of ways you could talk about it, but if anything, it would be... it gets arguably a little bit more abstract.
So it could be like influence in court.
Yeah, or like... I think I once saw it described as you have one treasure. Or like a one hoard. You like, I have 5 hoards, and it's like that. Buying that plot of land that costs 1 hoard. You cannot just stack up to having I stacked these numbers. These you can't stack up gold coins until they each were a hoard any more than you can stack up apples and have them enter the gold economy that way. It's not. It's a little bit.
You have to do lots of in between steps to turn apples into
and
money.
There's a certain amount to which you have to be accepted into that social sphere.
Yeah.
And so there would be certain things. So it's like, well, okay, you need this kind of currency to buy those special things that you can't otherwise get. And you could even go further. There could be in a fantasy context. There could be a 4th step where you have an economy based on souls, because you can
do some deals with the devil, the
souls
literal devil,
or wishes, or other very special say magic artifacts that are unique. Because no one's you can't really buy the Excalibur, even if you had a vault of money. Yeah. They're not going to take it.
No one's selling
that. Basically immeasurable value. So the only way you'd be able to, if you ever wanted to engage in economic activity with that, you'd need another thing of immeasurable value. Get those infinities to cancel each other out.
Right. And so it's sort of like, it goes back to the barter economy in a way, right? That money becomes this thing that counts for everything, right? And then you kind of, when you get to the highest level, you're back to I'm trading turnips for chickens, right? My very specific thing for your very specific thing, right? And back down to that party level economy, right? Of hey, I'll give you the +2 bow if you give me the wand, right? I found the bow and you found the wand, but I could use that a lot more, right?
You could also, there are a number of ways you can treat this. One of the something you'll find in some games is the idea of a wealth score.
Oh yeah, there's quite a few games that have that.
Quite a few games that have it. One that comes to mind is Rogue Trader does this.
Oh yeah, Rogue Trader.
Right, because Rogue Trader has you operating on that kind of level where your character is basically a minor nobility, effectively, but also kind of a merchant. And you are operating on that kind of vaults of treasure kind of tier. And so like you can just sort of buy stuff where it's like, well, my wealth is 5, and that means I can just get anything that is 5 or below. I only actually, and it doesn't even reduce my score.
No.
You maybe often you can be like, well, you can maybe like, well, this is a tier 6 thing, so I have to reduce my score to actually buy that. Yeah. But anything below that is just you're not even accounting for that. Who cares?
Who cares?
I do think that is a problem. So here is unfortunately a big perhaps not that hot take. I don't actually like keeping track of money.
Yeah, right. It's exciting to get.
I mean, sure, but honestly, I don't even actually like gathering up gold pieces that much. I've played so many games where you really spend a lot of time, like, accounting for how many gold pieces you got and for how much that gem costs, and let's do division to try to, and then what do I do with the remainder? And I don't even care,
right?
And to some extent, there's it tends to encourage some almost even more boring behaviors. Like I've seen it's the idea of completely like, okay, we're in this dungeon, we must completely strip it of every last dagger.
I hate that.
I've seen this referred to as greyhawking.
I mean, to me, it's Skyrimming, right? It's the 20 rusty daggers that's for some reason the merchant will buy from you. Mm-hmm. It's a very kind of weird gamey logic.
And well, that's part of what we were saying. Like if you just say like, well, no, you cannot stack up gold pieces to get to the next tier. That ends up being of limited utility.
Yeah. Right. So it's interesting. So we're playing a game right now that's set in the real world, right? Delta Green, right? Or the real world, but basically, right? And it's just doesn't mention money anywhere, right?
Yeah.
It's just whatever, you have what you need. It's fine.
Maybe you can requisition
I think
stuff.
There's some rules for money, but it's basically just hey, if you would buy something really unusual, right, then there's some rules around that. Right?
Yeah, and I think that honestly that's more common in modern games. I feel like I've played a lot of modern games either don't involve money or they involve some sort of wealth score because they recognize that in the modern world, the idea of money is pretty complicated. A lot of things are tied up in your pension and your what's in your bank account and what's in your...
And also a lot of the things you might want to buy as oh, hey, kitty.
Oh, hello.
Do you want some attention? You could come up here.
Okay.
Right?
You can keep talking.
Anyway, what was I saying? It's just you can't go buy a rocket launcher, right? At the point where you have access, the amount of money it costs is less relevant, right? And it's more about what do you have access to.
This is Griffin. Go
on. Which is kind of, similar to that idea of the wealth levels. And that's often why I think that economy gets used, that style of economy in more contemporary games, right? So, I don't know. What's a kind of economy that you haven't seen that you'd be interested in seeing?
Well, okay. This is something that I've... So another kind of an interesting kind of economy is gift economies.
Oh yeah, gift economies. Okay,
right. To give a summary of what that means, it's a little bit misleading.
Yeah.
Because a gift economy is almost a little bit kind of a debt economy.
Yeah.
The idea of it's economies where you don't really care about primarily money. You do give gifts, though. There tends to be some very culturally important system of ritualized giving of gifts.
Yeah, so we're on the West Coast, so obviously the potlatch, right?
Sure.
Would be the thing that comes to mind, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a common thing in a number of Polynesian cultures, where they would actually go to great lengths to travel huge distances in these great circular patterns of visiting here and here and here because we need to give the gifts to keep it going. And that's but it's almost kind of in some ways tends to be a system of patronage.
Yeah, it's more the people who are accumulating wealth because of their hereditary position or whatever, right? So people kind of funnel wealth up to them, but then they funnel the wealth back out, right, in the form of gifts.
Right. The gifts are about showing a and once again there are a lot of variations.
Yeah, we're simplifying. We're doing
doing
right?
a sketch. And it's very interesting. I'd love to get down into it, except we don't really have time. Right. You're reinforcing that the ongoing relationship. Of wanting, we are continuing to do business with each other, so to speak, and if it's you, if it's someone of wealth and power, I'm giving this to you so that you'll keep liking me, but they're also giving things back,
and often to show off that they are powerful,
right? Because this is what the thing about debt. Because when you give that gift, that person is now kind of indebted to you.
Yeah.
But it goes a little bit of both ways. So this is you could, if you were going to treat it like there are a number of games that have a concept of having a debt to someone. They'll call it like in some, I think a number of
I think they call it a bond sometimes.
Yeah, in a number of like PBTA games, they'll have things, they'll call it like a string.
Oh,
or a debt or something like that.
In Monster Hearts, right? You definitely have strings.
Right, where
right?
It's a more binary thing, or you can sometimes stack them up, but you'll have like you owe someone something, and they can call that in.
Yeah.
But you could, like in a gift economy context, you could treat it as a little bit more of a two-way street. Like, for example, you could do it that while you owe someone a debt, they can call it in, and that cancels the debt, and they can just force you to do something for you. But at the same time, while they're holding that debt, that indicates a relationship, one that the two of you might not actually want to break off, because they can use that as leverage to make it say, get a bonus or however your system works, to ask something of you. But you can also use it to ask something of them.
Yeah.
Because there's a sense of that you are like a client of theirs, and they want you to stick around because you still kind of owe them, but they want that relationship to continue, because they're going to lose that bonus. They're also going to be losing something out if they call it in. They don't necessarily want to force that.
This actually comes back to the weird parallel with current debt, in that most places they give you debt, kind of want you to hold on to it and only pay the interest. Right?
They want you to. They don't want that debt to be canceled, because then that relationship is over and you stop paying them interest.
Yeah, right? Like the ideal client is someone who accumulates a lot of debt and then always pays the interest, right? That's the ideal debt holder.
Right.
And so like on this more social level, right, it's like, oh, you have the capital debt, but then you're kind of like paying interest.
Right.
Right? You're kind of like, oh, like we have this ongoing relationship, right, where we can kind of call in favors from each other and things, but it's more two-way than the relationship that the credit card company says, you can have access to all my money, right, as long as you pay it back, right?
Right, and I do think that this is something that in games people tend to elide social entanglements, and like everything ends up being like very like zero sum, and always cancel out at the nearest opportunity, and you're not beholden to anyone.
Yeah, and it's I kind of get the impulse there, because there's already a lot to keep track of. Right? You're simulating a whole world. It's often mostly on one person, right? And it's just like right now, I think for this game I'm running, I think I have like 20 NPCs or something to keep track of, right? If I was also keeping track of like the debt ratio that they have to various characters, that might be a bit much, right? But I do like this idea of within the party, right, having like meaningful debts and favors, right, and having like a favor debt gift economy going on, right, and it also gives a strong incentive to collecting unique items, right, because but especially unique items that might not be valuable to you, because often that's the constraint, is all the items that, they happen to be all magical weapons that we could use, right, and like that feels weird, right? It's like, but if you find a magical thing that's not even for adventurers, it like helps you dig wells or whatever, right? It's like, but what a great gift to the nearby town.
Honestly, incredibly economically helpful.
Yeah, right? So I do kind of really like that idea, right? You're working on this game that's protoplastic, right?
Right.
So what's the economy that you're thinking of for this game?
Honestly, pretty similar to it would be pretty similar to that concept of the the gift economy. I think that's an interesting design space that I haven't seen played around with a lot. It's not really a setting where you care a whole lot about money.
Yeah, because you're like your bionicle heroes, basically.
Basically, yeah, it's more about you're kind of a biomechanical robot people, and what you actually care. You have a farm that grows body parts.
Oh,
And
the body part farm.
the body part farm.
So wholesome.
So wholesome. What you care a lot about is like sailing to islands and then making that social connection where you can come back and be like, hey, I need a part because that guy
Chopped off my leg and threw in the ocean.
Exactly. Or like no. The monsters over there are ice, and I need a flamethrower arm.
Oh, so a bit of that sort of like Metroidvania thing as well, right? Yeah, because I'm also working on this game slowly about like potions and crafting potions, and obviously there's a lot of impulse to take that in a capitalist direction where you have like a potion shop and you're selling potions to people, but I feel like that's kind of A, been done, and B, I'm not that interested in, right? So it's more like, well, what is the economy for potions, right? Like, what does the local healer want, right? When you are the local healer, like, what do you want from people, right? Do you want their gratitude, their respect? Do you want access to some things, right? Do you want favors in return, right?
And I do think that thinking about that in a little bit more depth than people often do is an interesting field of I should say, like, is a fruitful field to think about for coming up with things. I think people tend to think of it like not want to think about economies in a setting because it sounds boring.
Yeah, and it's also the kind of economy you have in a lot of ways incentivizes certain kinds of behavior, right? So the gold economy says like, hey, steal from people, kill people and take their gold, right? Go kill monsters and take their gold, right? That it's kind of a lot of ways like it's an economy of violence.
Well,
right?
It acts like a soldier for like a great deal of human history,
right?
Pillage,
right? And it's sort of because once you get the gold, no one needs to know where it came from, and no one cares, right? There's no like ties to its origin, right? It's not like if you trade land or something, it matters where the land is and who it came from, right? And it's not like things like favors where it matters who owes you the favor and what kind of favor they could do for you, right? And so, it leads to this economy that's kind of just like, often people call it like the gold treadmill, right? There's this feeling of like you're just accumulating gold and buying the next item and accumulating gold and buying the next item. And it can feel like a little like MMO-y or like sort of like, a phone game, right? Like, wait, why am I doing this, right?
So, that actually brings up another point I wanted to make is how would you go about making a game that was actually about economics?
Ooh, a game about an artist commune. Right?
How so?
Well, I think it's about like when you're in this isolated little society where you've agreed that like, hey, we're a commune now, we're sharing everything, but everyone's coming in with ideas from a capitalist society, right? About who deserves what and who should have more and who should have less, right? And the ways that might subtly play out, right? Let's say that you sold art that was worth more to the outside. Should you get a bigger share, right? And all the like the little infighting and stuff I think could be interesting,
okay,
right?
Yeah,
but I don't know if that would be really about an economy. That'd be more about like,
yeah,
the social dynamics, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a maybe not strictly about that as much, but there's a game just came out, or there's a Kickstarter, Milk Bar.
Oh, I think I've heard of this.
It actually is about being on like a Polish commune, basically.
Hell
in this
yeah.
kind of like, it's kind of stalker. It has a really interesting system where a lot of it is about effectively base building for your commune, but you have to go out and into the zone and like establish a logistics network.
Oh, okay, that kind of rules. That's a game that's sounds pretty economic.
Oh, sure, because like what you actually care about is to a great extent like I need units of metal and food and water and wood so that I can like because they're to build that radio tower I need 30 units of metal and so on. But the units are big. And they're not just like, well, I can ferry back 10 units. No. A unit is like the size of a person. And so there's a whole system of like how many units. Like there's vehicle rules, but if anything, the top thing you care about with a vehicle is how much it can haul.
Yeah, and this is very much like calling back to that early D&D, where like how you get the treasure from the dungeon back to the town was like this whole weird mini game, right?
That people end up stop doing.
Yeah. Right, because there's parts of it that were tedious, but it's like you can make that pretty engaging. That can be an interesting problem to solve.
So I think that kind of model. I think like that's actually part of the thing is that I think that I feel like we're going to see more base building type mechanics coming up because I think that's a really way that you can make economics interesting more than just having money that then purely flows back into maybe getting another +1.
Right, it gives you a sink for the money, right? That
sink, huge sink,
right? That often when you have these little systems, right, it's important to have a place that the excess money can go and disappear, right? Because if all the money goes into making more money, quickly the whole thing just spirals off into infinity.
Right.
That if, I spend money to get better equipment, which lets me kill bigger monsters, which lets me get more money, right? Quickly gold becomes like irrelevant. You have huge amounts of it.
Yeah.
Right?
You're
No,
okay. Yeah, although I would say like if anything one of the methods that I've seen more often is the money sink is massive debt. This one goes back a long way.
I'm thinking though of Electric Bastion Land. Don't
yes.
you start in like way so much debt?
Yeah, everyone starting in debt is one of the basic parts of character creation is like who are you in debt to?
Yeah, which starts with the relationship.
Yeah, and that is why you are going adventuring because you have to pay off that debt, and that's why you're all tied together because you all owe that debt to the same person. And but even going back a little bit, going back to like Traveler in like 1977, a large part of that game, why do you have your like tramp freighter spaceship? It's mostly to do trade. It's mostly like, okay, we're going to go to, like, you can get involved in warfare and that sort of thing, but a lot of what you were doing is that you all bought a spaceship, and spaceships are not cheap. And now you are way in the red, and you need to pay off that spaceship by like setting down on this planet, and they have some sort of psychic crystal. But a couple star systems over, they will buy that psychic crystal for twice as much.
Yeah. Right.
So that like knowledge of local pricing is important. And that is a way you can I think make that's another way you could make economics interesting is the idea of being a traveling salesman, where you actually could without a massive input. You have to do some upfront work, but I think it's potentially a reasonable thing to have like, okay, we have these regions and there may be these products that you would probably want to reduce down to a relatively small number of products that matter. And then you could generate market shift. You could like, during when you have a downtime phase, you could roll for like, oh, there's a plague here now, so medicine's going to be worth more.
They're clearly interested in doing this because all the time I'm seeing like YouTube and stuff, like people talking about like, I broke my D&D economy, right, by doing like using Fabricate to make a bunch of plate mail or whatever, right? That people kind of want to interact with the economy. They want to mess with it. They like this fantasy of winning the economy game, right? Getting rich, right? But it's interesting because like economies are interesting when they are based on scarcity, right? That's sort of what makes economies tick, right? And a lot of contemporary, like for example, D&D 5th edition, there's no scarcity, right? At least once you get to higher levels, there's just like gold is ever flowing, right? You get pretty much anything you need, right? And since there's no sort of like lack, right, it sort of makes the gold meaningless. And that's why I think a lot of the games that focus on economies have these more like desperate settings, post-apocalypse, things like that.
Are you familiar with Red Markets?
I am not familiar with Red Markets.
That is a game that it very explicitly even in the name, is supposed to be about that. It's actually a post-apocalyptic zombie game.
Oh, okay.
Except that in some ways the zombies are almost just like there to create a desperate situation, because what the game is really interested in is that you are you have a constant burning need to make more money, not to get rich, but because you have people relying on you. A lot of character creation has a major step of creating dependence, where you have a child and you have a spouse and you have like an ailing relative, et cetera, that are all kind of designed to be hungry mouths that are never full.
Right. That even if you feed them, then suddenly one of them gets sick and needs a special medicine that costs a huge amount.
Right. And so I guess you gotta go leave the walls of the settlement to go kill some zombies and loot stuff from the old world. It's incredibly dangerous. Your life expectancy is maybe a couple years in this line of work, but it's the only way you can make enough money to deal with that. But and then you end up having to balance, like, okay, am I giving them, am I bringing home enough money? But then also, like, am I spending so much time in the field making that money that I'm never at home with my child? And it actually has a really interesting system of that, and how that, like, your ongoing relationship.
Oh,
with
that
those
is
people.
Interesting.
It's actually very neat. So I would cite that as something I've really seen. It's that's a very more of a microeconomic take.
I feel like a lot of the microeconomic takes, there's more room to do something interesting.
Because it's more character focused.
Yeah, right. Once you get into like big economies, it's like now you're talking about factions, right? Nations, laws, big groups of people.
And at a certain point, you start asking, like, why am I not just playing a 4X?
Right? Why am I playing an RPG at all?
Yeah, why I could just go play Civ.
Yeah, right. That's sometimes the weird thing about like domain play, right? And I'm just like, board games exist.
Yeah.
Right?
It is
if you want to build castles on a fake German landscape, there is a lot of games that do that.
I think that you can. There are ways you can do that. Pendragon, also over there, famously did try to build that into the game itself, where like you are doing like kind of an Arthurian sort of situation, but like you're caring about domains, but you're also caring so much about the like courtly intrigue.
Okay, that sounds more interesting.
And like matters of success. It's a game that it's generational. You care about like leaving a legacy, and there are matters of succession. So it goes in depth in really interesting ways that make that matter.
Oh, I really wish I could remember the name of this game. Oh, it's eluding me. But there's a game where it's not quite an RPG. It's more board gamey, but it's kind of an RPG, right? Where you're playing these different factions at a court, right? You're playing a different family, and these cards come up that require you to vote and make decisions. And then those decisions might later bite you all in the ass, right? You don't know, right? It might affect some people and not others, right? And so it's really this like politics game, right? And I'm like, I feel like that's what people want out of domain play a lot of the time.
Like Kingdom?
No, it's not an RPG. It's normally talked about in the board game space.
Oh, okay.
Right? But it has a lot of role-playing elements.
Yeah.
Right?
One classic game of this overall type is Diplomacy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I played Diplomacy once. Miserable. I think that's most people's experience of Diplomacy. That is the average Diplomacy experience. Right? Because it takes so long. Right? It's hours and hours and hours, right? And of course, like you just run out of patience at a certain point, and then you get backstabbed after working with someone for like 3 hours, and it emotionally hurts, right? I did this in like a university board game club, and I thought I'd be fine with it. I was not fine with it. Anyway, me coming out hard against Diplomacy.
No.
Along with everyone else.
I think this is the place for hot takes.
Yeah. It's not even a hot take. That is a cold take that Diplomacy sucks. Right? And that it is unpleasant to play.
I mean, that's also cold take about Monopoly.
Yeah.
Another classic economic game.
That's the thing, is it's so easy for economic games to potentially go into tedium, right? Or, if they're competitive, then it's very easy for them to get really lopsided, right? Because economies often have these feedback loops in them. Like, one of my favorite games is Dota, and Dota is a game about economy, right? But every game only lasts an hour for a reason, right? Because as soon as one team starts to get ahead, they start to have more and more ways to get further ahead, right? There tends to be this snowballing effect. There's also other things that help you catch up, right? And sort of rubber banding stuff. But a lot of economy games have this quality where, like, your early decisions are totally of an outsized impact, right? Because the more money you have, the more money you make.
Right. Which is realistic.
It's realistic.
But not necessarily fun.
Yeah. Well, a lot of board games do this, but the key thing is ending the game before it gets too out of control, right? A lot of these engine building games, it's like, oh, the more you have, the more you can get that lets you have more and make more, and it gets, and this has this exciting build. But if you ever play one that goes a little too long, it quickly goes from exciting build up to tedious management of too many things, right? And you're like, oh, I need an assistant to help me deal with my weird fake economy.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually something I was going to think about. It's not in the tabletop RPG, but something I've been told many stories about is the economy of EVE Online.
Oh yeah, that's crazy to me.
It's wild,
right?
And the funny thing is, it's not even the game itself. It has those things, but what really happened, what really made it interesting was even less the way the game design was done intentionally, really, so much as the culture.
Yeah, there's a culture of paying your dues for a very long time for people who had early investment to have most of the stuff, right? And then also this idea that that everything is of value, right? And that it equates to real world value. We're going to treat everything in this fake world like it's very valuable.
It became very serious, and people do a lot of things that outside of the game proper, where they created websites, and they got really in deep with various OPSEC for keeping their what they were going, we're planning to do this and this and this, and we have to keep it secret. But there literally were people who would spy on you outside of the game.
Yeah.
In order to find out what you're doing, because some of the amounts of the conversions to real world money, it was non-trivial
amounts of money,
dollar
right?
values.
Yeah.
And there'd be whole systems of they had insurance plans. They weren't even really so much something that was in the game per se, so much as you were just, if you were in a given faction, and it's okay, well, we need to field 100 ships for this battle war. It's okay, but what's in it for me? It's okay, well, if you go to battle with us, your ship might get blown up, but we have an insurance plan. We will replace your ship. And that required basically bureaucracy.
Yes.
People ended up being full-time accountants and basically playing this game primarily through spreadsheets and Zoom meetings.
Right? And that's where I think most people would get off the boat. Right? They're like, wait a minute, I don't want my game to be a job. Right? And there's so many of the reward mechanisms in our brain are incentivized to make us produce things, right? Especially both culturally, but also I'd say to some extent biologically, where we want lots of stuff, right? And it's very easy to trick our brains into thinking that we're doing something great, right? If we trick our brains into thinking that we're doing something productive, right? Even if the thing we're producing is nonsense, right?
Meaningless.
Right? It's just and so it's sort of these weird fake economies can emerge, right? That end up having real world value to an extent that people are willing to trade things of actual value for the fake stuff.
Right. But I think that it's really worth thinking about that tendency, though, because it's clearly very real in a way that people can get very invested in something. If you could tease out what led to that. You could make the next E.
I think part of it is the promise of the link back to the real economy.
I mean, maybe
this is true with Magic cards as well.
I suppose,
right?
But I don't know. I think a lot of what people get invested with is clout in the game world.
Clout in the game world does matter, but I think part of that clout is based on the idea that, like, because some of the stuff can sell for real world money, right? You know, there's sort of this ongoing agreement that, like, hey, this stuff is of real value, right? You know, the same with the Magic cards that are worth a lot, right? That it's like, oh, these are of real value, right? And, you know, like, these things aren't just the physical thing they're made out of, right? Anyway, I feel like we've kind of covered a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Right? Was there anything more you wanted to say about Economies?
What else would I say? I mean, I think I've hit a number of things. Oh, I did want to point out I will say, bringing it back around to what I was saying earlier, I think economies are more interesting in like a world building perspective than people give them credit for, because they tend to assume it will be boring. But the thing is that a fantasy economy can be all sorts of things.
Yeah, it can be real wild.
Because you could pick that it's like, oh no, their economy is all based on like
blood. It's the blood economy.
Blood, or like our entire economy is based on wishes. We figured out a way to assembly line summon genies and get 3 wishes from each. And so everything is about, well, I have 6 wishes per year.
An economy of wishes would be weird.
Yeah.
Because obviously the wishes would have to have clear limits, or else...
This would to write this, you would have to...
Right, you'd have to have like minor wishes, major wishes, medium wishes.
Exactly.
Right?
My point is that you can write a really interesting economy, and the more you are willing to follow that to the ends of the ramifications can make you end up in somewhere way more interesting than if you're like, that's
it's gold. It's credits.
Yeah, or like, well, I could do that, but I'll just say it and I won't work out the ramifications because that seems hard. But you could end up with something way more interesting and engaging if you're willing to think about it a little bit more and what that would actually mean. Even more basic stuff where like something you'll see a lot is I think people, like, even when they're writing like their like medieval fantasy setting, like people really underestimate how much farmland there should be.
Oh yeah, there should be a lot of farmland.
It's almost all farmland.
It's almost all farmland. The only thing that is more of farmland is wilderness.
Yeah, that castle town, like that you were having like hours to get to that castle town is just wheat.
Mm-hmm.
Or rice or whatever the staple grain is. It's just fields and upon field upon field, and eventually within those rings in the very center there's that castle. But people want to have it be like basically just something unto itself, which is very ahistorical.
Yes,
and it's like it's not even all about always about the realism. I feel like it's partially just maybe caring. I don't know. I think it's worthwhile to think about those other 90% of the people in that setting, what they care about.
Yeah, right. And then when you interact with the miller or the baker or whatever, right, there's like a little bit more like, oh, they're in this village over here and they go to market on Sundays, and like there's a little more character to them. But it's also it's like, well, what kind of a game are you trying to play? Right? You're trying to play the game that's about the little people, or are you playing a game that's about the big damn heroes and killing a dragon?
And I'm not saying you have to always get down into that nitty gritty, but I think that it can be actually interesting if you come at it in the right way. I would say if you ever read a collection of unmitigated pedantry.
No, I have. What? What is that?
It's a blog run by a history professor. It's so good.
Okay.
It has like a whole setting which is just like for articles for world building purposes, and I think the author is especially is specialized into like classical antiquity, but they talk a lot about even just like, here is my 10-part series about the economy of Lord of the Rings. and trying to basically take it seriously as a thing. And what would this mean? And what's going on here? And it's actually fascinating to read. It's
Yeah,
not
because
at all-
obviously Tolkien thought about the economy. There's
I
no way
honestly,
Tolkien
well,
didn't.
Actually, this author would agree with you that the what's going on in Lord of the Rings makes a lot more sense than
Most
the majority
fantasy
of
economies.
fantasy authors. But I think it's great because it's kind of in some cases just like really academic grade information, but it's presented in a way that's very easy to understand and really interesting and fun.
Okay.
So I would recommend that.
Yeah, that's our big shout out.
Shout out.
Right? To, what was it? Unmitigated pedantry?
Yeah, Brett Devereaux. We can put a link.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like that's a good spot to kind of wrap
pretty
things
good.
up.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't decide on what our what a log out is. That's not what it's called. Our tagline.
Our sign off.
Our sign off.
Sign off.
Right? So yeah, just keep making RPGs, talking about RPGs, playing RPGs, have some fun.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll catch you all next time.
Bye.
Bye.